Good afternoon, everyone. You're very welcome. I'm just going to give it a few seconds now as I see people joining. So we had over 50 people registered for the webinar today. Hopefully we get loads of those here. I know the weather doesn't help. It's tempting to go out to the sun. We'll kick off now in a few seconds. You're very welcome. So we'll go ahead. You're very welcome to today's session. My name is Annabelle and I'm one of the business development managers here at Smurfit Executive Development. Today we're here to showcase our diploma in strategy development and innovation and our diploma in organizational change and transformation. So for those of you who are not familiar with us, we are number one provider for executive education open enrollment programs as ranked by the Financial Times World Rankings. We've held this number one position now for 10 years in a row. We're also part of the Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School, which is the only Irish institution to hold the Elite Triple accreditation. And to maintain this high standard, we partner with a global network, different global networks for business education, such as Unicon and SEMS. So why would you come to us? We are very familiar with that you are senior executives with very busy working and personal lives, and we've designed all our programs, both accredited and non-accredited, to facilitate you. So we have accredited part-time diplomas, which run over about 9 months. They're on topics such as strategy, leadership, coaching, digital and AI, and they're stackable. So you can do 3 diplomas with us and qualify with the master's. Then, if you don't have the time to do a diploma or master's, we also have short executive programs. And these are short, sharp. The idea is you build your knowledge, your skills, your mindset, that you can go back to your role and apply the learnings to have impact. For today's session, I'm joined by Professor Pat Gibbons. Pat is the Programme Director of both the Diploma in Strategy Development and Innovation and the Diploma in Organisational Change. And Pat will take you through both programmes in detail, and he'll also be joined by past participant Laura Nolan. We're very lucky to have Laura here because she is a senior executive. She does have a busy working and personal life, and she fitted in these programs. She's done a full master's with us. And, it's nice to get her view on how did she fit it in around her busy schedule, what was it like to be in the classroom, and what did she get out of it to bring back to her role and her work and have impact. So we will take questions at the end. I invite you to put your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. And for now, then, I will hand you over to Pat. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Annabelle. And Laura, delighted that you can join us to have this discussion. And thanks everyone for tuning in to this webinar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just run briefly through the sort of content and objectives of both programs with a few slides. And then I think we'll have a conversation with Laura about her experience, and then we'll have a Q&A. But as we're going along, if you have questions, if you can maybe on the chat, put them down, and Annabelle will compile them and so on, and we can deal with them. So we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So, as Annabelle mentioned, I'm the director of both the Diploma in Strategy and the Diploma in Org Change and Transformation. And let me talk about them in sequence. I'll start off with a Diploma in Strategy. And I'm always open up that diploma with this quote, because and you can read it as quickly as I can call it out. But this guy is a sort of Fortune magazine editor, was formerly the editor of Fortune magazine, and he was writing about the development of the idea of strategy. And towards the end of that little quote, you see that he says strategy is coming to dominance as the framework by which companies understand what they're doing and want to do. the construct or idea through which and around which the rest of their efforts are organized, eclipses any other change worked in the intellectual landscape of business over the past 50 years. So I just offered this quote as, identifying and highlighting that, strategy is a central concern of senior executives. Getting the strategy right, getting the direction right, articulating how we execute the strategy, are really critical executive concerns. And the diploma in strategy is really designed to equip you with the tools to help you navigate strategy and have more informed conversations around strategy. What we cover and the six modules in most of our programs. Um, First one we call strategic leadership, and that really is focused on providing a toolkit to people, the conceptual frameworks and so on, to help think about strategy, evaluate strategy, and hopefully develop strategy. That's followed by strategy in a turbulent environment where we really think about what's going on outside the firm and also what the impact on strategy development is and how you might develop and how you more formally might go and develop a strategy. Naturally, strategy for most organizations is about having something distinctive, being successful in the marketplace. Certainly, that's true for profits, but even for not-for-profits, it's also important to think about what value do we deliver. So that's true for profits and non-for-profits, for government agencies and so on. What's the value that we offer? What's the value that we deliver? And that really is the substance of the third diploma. Another toolkit is about business models and business model innovation, and that's the focus of the fourth diploma. Then leading innovation and change, moving towards execution, moving towards, okay, we have the strategy. Now, what are the levers we have to execute that strategy? And then finally, one of the issues that is perennial for all organizations is how do we make strategic decisions? What's the process that we should use to make strategic decisions? And that's the focus of the last module, which talks about top management teams, top management team dynamics, and what's the decision-making process, and how might we design a good strategic decision-making process, taking both quantitative and qualitative factors into account. So, in other words, what we're trying to do across these six short modules is, really to provide you with, a language, a toolkit, a set of concepts that you can take with you back to your job. And what I should say is, and I'll come back to this later, the assessments for all of these, there are no exams. So the assessments are all very much focused on how do you apply the learning? How do you apply what you've learned in this module to your particular context? So this this the translation is essential as far as we're concerned. What's the objective of the diploma? Now, we can talk about formal learning objectives, but in reality, I think a lot of people come to the diploma. And one of the things we try to do is what I call there illuminate the most overused word in the English language. I mean, strategy has to be the most overused word in the English language. Everything is strategic. Everything we have to have a strategy for this, that, and the other. And so what we want to do is, think about what are the important things that strategy needs to address. And maybe you don't have a strategy for everything. That strategy is reserved for really critical, important, long run, big impact decisions. Then, another one that frequently comes up is, the sort of the nomenclature, the words, the buzzwords, and really to clarify conceptual confusion around mission, vision, strategy, purpose, tactics. And that's more than semantics, because each of these things really has a purpose. Each of these things has a different purpose. So it's not just semantics to talk about, well, what do we mean by mission? What do we mean by vision? What do we mean by a strategy? It is important that the words have meaning, and they have meaning, and they have specific meanings, and they answer different questions. And the questions that are posed by these words are important, and they're important to sort of get right. So want to try to clarify confusion around that. We want to provide participants with a set of concepts and a sense of confidence to help contribute to strategy discussions. So, many are going to be pulled into strategy discussions, strategy weekends, strategy retreats. And so, how can we make a bigger contribution in those situations? How can we begin to think about or to think more strategically and make a contribution when we're involved in those discussions and thereby, basically contribute to our career advancement? Um, Naturally, the bottom line at the end, we'd like to provide you with a toolkit to help you develop and evaluate a strategy. So all your organizations have a current strategy. Whether it's well articulated or not is another question. Whether it's well defined or not is another question. But your organizations are relating in some way to your environment. So there is a strategy there. So it's important to be able to unpack what that strategy is, evaluate it, and perhaps change it if you need to change it. And overall, I mean, this is a social, enterprise in the sense that, we'll gather 25 to 30 people together in a room. We'll meet, five, six times. And what we want to do at the end of the day is enhance your capability in terms of knowledge and skills, enhance your confidence in terms of the application of that knowledge and skills. And then finally, let's enjoy ourselves. Let's make sure that we have a very worthwhile experience, learning from each other and having, in all seriousness, having some fun while getting the work done. So that's our primary objective. What's the outcome? Um, what I will say is our next intake for this diploma will be our 36th intake of this diploma since we started in 2012. This diploma is by far our best seller. Um, there is a high degree of satisfaction across all modules. So I think we have a very good team of people teaching on the diploma. They're certainly among our most high caliber faculty. And I think the outcomes reflect that. The assignments are all practically focused, and this can demonstrate impact for the organization and for you. So, in other words, many of the things we'll be doing, you can take to your organization and you can apply them. And the other added benefit is the variety of people in the classroom provides very extensive networking opportunities for you and ensures a really rich diversity of perspectives in the classroom. Okay, and that's a key part of the learning process. We try to make sure that our teaching is participant centered, is highly interactive. There isn't a lot of, there's some, of course, there's some lecturing, of course, there's some provision, but we break that up with discussion groups. So what? What's the implication for your organization? Case studies, a lot of case study discussion. And that really animates the learning process. So that's the diploma in strategy. In terms of the participant profile, for all sectors, private sector, public sector, not-for-profit sector, all represented in the classroom. Some testimonials, again, I think what some of these speak to is the teaching style being interactive, put structure on a vague concept to develop a strategy, challenging thinking, practical, repeatable toolkit. So I think that those are the things that we're striving to deliver, and we're delighted to receive testimonials like this. Moving on to org change, so again, what are the basic ingredients to the diploma? We have an introductory session on the whole concept of change, transformation, and organization development. Then module two looks at diagnostic models. So how do you diagnose an organization and organizational analysis? How do you analyze an organization? And then really three separate modules. Change at the individual level, change at the group and team level, and change at the organizational level. So we try to take it at the three levels that we see in organizations. What are the mechanisms to help change individuals and intervene with individuals? What are the mechanisms to help change and intervene at groups and team level? And what are the mechanisms we have to intervene at the major system or organizational level? And then the last one, just your role as leading change, your role in leading change, and what are the skills, competencies, and capabilities that you need to lead change. Yeah, again, what's the objective? I think we emphasize the planned nature of change. Now, not all changes are planned, but we have our orientation is to think about what our planned changes. Again, provide skills and competencies across those three levels, individual, team, and organization. Um, again, providing the language, providing a toolkit, providing the concepts to help you discuss in a much more sophisticated manner, hopefully, these notions of change and how to change an organization. Again, building on out the toolkit, outlining different interventions that could be used to animate change. And again, I say this with all the diplomas, we want to enhance our primary focus is to enhance capability, confidence, and to make sure that you want to come back when you finish your first module, that you're looking forward to the next module and you're looking forward to the module after that. That we want it to be stimulating, we want to be enjoyable, and we want to make sure we're providing value to you. Again, what's the outcome? Our next intake will be the 22nd intake of this module, and we started this a bit later. So this is our second bestseller. Again, high degree of satisfaction. Again, the assignments are practically focused. And again, broad variety of people. It's particularly popular with people undergoing or contributing to the design and animation of significant change programs. So a lot of people who come on the program, I'd say the same with the strategy program. A lot of people come on the program and saying, listen, we're developing a strategic plan for next year and I'd like to have a toolkit. Or we're undergoing a major change program and I'd like to know more about it and have a toolkit to help animate the change. Again, we draw from the private sector, the public sector, and not-for-profit sector, and you see representatives of these sectors in every cohort that we have. So it's eclectic, and the content, and again, people keep coming back, so the content is relevant to the three broad sectors of the economy. Again, some testimonials coincided perfectly with the change program, the academic insight with diverse perspectives. Again, learning, we're all going through change programs. We all see different paces of change programs. We all see different success outcomes of change programs. And again, so there's a lot to learn from the colleagues in the classroom. I can pick up the phone to classmates for advice, which is a fantastic thing to be able to say. Um, you can read a lot, but you need lecturers and the experience and diversity of your classmates in the classroom environment to bring it to life. And I think that speaks to getting together getting together in a single location, physically together in a single location and learning from each other. And I think that's an important outcome. Why both? This is really my last slide. Why both? I was trying to think of a representation. I think these two diplomas like yin and yang. I mean, I think they absolutely go together. They're symbiotic with each other. In a way, what you could think of is the diploma in strategy is about formulating a strategy. It's about coming up with the ideas, developing the concept, developing the mission, the vision, the strategy, in a way, the action plan, thinking about our capabilities needed to develop and execute a strategy. And the Diploma in Org Change and Transformation takes that and sort of runs with it and tries to figure out, right, what are the interventions we need to make to execute the strategy? What are the interventions that are needed at the organizational level, the group and team level, and the individual level to make sure we deliver and execute the strategy? So the diploma in strategy is very much the sort of conceptual engine, the sort of analytical techniques, the approaches to develop strategy. And then the second diploma, the diploma in org change, is very much around how do you bring the people with you and what are the organizational levers we have to deal with resistance to change and so on, and how do we affect change. So that's the overview. And I'd now like to invite Laura. And Laura, first of all, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today.
No
And secondly,
problem.
maybe you could start off by, telling us about yourself and maybe what animated you to think about the diplomas and how you use them.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for having me, and it's great to be here. When I started on the journey with the diplomas, it's probably 5 years ago now. So I was in a digital marketing agency in the role of head of sales and or head of strategy and business development. And I think it was literally an email that popped in that showed. So the first course I actually did was the high performance sales and business growth. So I started out with that one and I loved it and learned a huge amount from it. And then I suppose I had ticked the sales box, so I figured I should look into something along the strategy lines. And I'd heard a lot of good feedback from different people on the courses about the strategy development and innovation. So I signed up for that one pretty much the next year. So I did the first two back to back and I loved it. Now, the difference for me, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but the first one I did, I think we had maybe done one module when COVID hit, so it moved online. And then, the dynamic between that versus the fully in-person strategy course, that added an extra layer onto it. Like it was definitely, I suppose, an incomparable experience having it in person. So after I finished the strategy development and innovation, the learnings from that brought me beyond what I had been doing in work and what I had the capacity to do in the company I was in. So as I think sometimes happens with people, when they, go through the education process, I ended up leaving where I was, and setting up as a consultant by myself. So that was, I think it was just over 3 years ago. I think I'm 2 weeks past my 3-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I left around May 2023 and set up on my own. And I suppose the reason being that what I had learned in the strategy development and innovation, my background is marketing. And this brought me kind of beyond the marketing into the wider the wider operational elements of strategy. It's not just about developing a lovely marketing plan. It's are the right people on the bus? Are they doing the right work? Are you positioning yourself correctly? And I suppose I loved the diagnostic models. We talk about is it applicable, but I will have, look, we'll talk about that in a minute, but there is tangible examples of within days of leaving a module, how quickly I was implementing stuff in the office. So yeah, so then I set out on my own and I had at that point done two. So the incentive was there to continue and get my master's. And I suppose the fact that I was no longer employed and self-employed meant that I was paying for this one myself. So even that, I think 1 year into business and investing in this, I suppose is a recommendation of how valuable I found them. I was flirting between the finance and the org change. Finance more so because I was like, it'd be good to add that string to my bow. But from conversations and looking at the modules, the trajectory my career was on and the consulting element of my role, the org change was the logical path for me. I suppose as you've used there, it's the language and it's the toolkits and it's the diagnostic models and, I suppose also the understanding of the complexities of strategy and org change. All companies go through them. And I think it's underestimated how difficult it is. I think particularly the org change was an interesting module or course for me because the sales and the strategy probably aligned and were maybe in my wheelhouse. The org change, I'd say halfway through the course, I was like, ugh, I never want to do this. And then by the end of the course, you're like, okay, I can do this. Like it was very much out of my comfort zone that by halfway through, you were at the point where what a nightmare organizational change can be in an organization. And then by the time you finish the course, you're like, okay, but I now know what I would need to do to make it successful. So yeah, so I think I graduated in December. So I've been self-employed doing my own thing for about 3 years now and working with kind of small to medium sized companies on growth strategy. So, where are you now? Where do you want to get to? Are you operationally structured to do so? And then very much using my assumptions workshops and my different bits and bobs from my modules to pull them through that discovery kind of phase.
Great. That's very gratifying to hear, Laura, I must say. You mentioned, the transition and actually the COVID experience was bad for everybody and we were online and I know you got a lot out of the sales diploma, but you then mentioned that the in-person was so different, such a richer experience. maybe you could speak to, just generally your the classroom experience and the type of people you met and what the interaction was like, and uh, just what was that dynamic like?
So I'm a big fan of the classroom experience. Like, let's say if you took all of us from both classes and put us into cohorts on the scale, I definitely valued that. It was great fun. We had group WhatsApp that there'd be a bit of laughing and messing going on in during class. There was, you know, like lovely chats at lunch. There was gangs that would go for walks around. But like in both classes, or both courses, I would say there was, particularly in the strategy and development and innovation, it was almost half and half between public sector and private sector. For me, that was really interesting because I have worked with public sector before, but it was very interesting to get under the hood of them, to
Mm,
actually sit with the head of comms in the HSE and
mm,
hear about the
mm,
challenges that she faces that we might maybe underestimate a little bit or not kind of identify. So I loved the interaction with the class. I loved getting to know people. There was good banter. There was good debate. We were going to lunch late because we couldn't agree on a
mm,
direction in a case study. But, it definitely added a layer.
mm.
It like I was saying, if the course is marked out of 100, I would say like 60% is the content because it's really strong and it was consistent across the three I did. I learned really valuable content, but 40% was the class.
Yeah.
And that particularly is after the fact. There's for the org change, there's three people that are consultants that I go for lunch with or dinner 2 or 3 times a year. I've given them business, they've given me business. You know, there's um there's probably out of classes, two classes of about 30 people, there's probably at least 10 people on each course that I would still keep in touch with and chat to. And I think that's huge.
Mm.
Um, it the difference between the online versus the offline, um, or in person versus online, like pulled
Mm.
apart.
Yep.
The quality and the content was consistent, but the experience and the follow through. I don't think any of the people that I did the sales course with, I'd actually still be in touch with because we
Yep.
just didn't get to meet each other at that level.
Absolutely. And you're busy. You're busy. You're particularly busy now with your own business, but I know you were busy when you were working, in the agency as well.
Mm.
And this is a commitment to time. It's just two days out of your time for every module. There's pre-reading, which we say we you have to do because otherwise you won't get the value. And then invariably there's an assignment afterwards. How do you find the workload, and how to manage that workload?
Well, I would have been busy, but I was nowhere near as busy as some of the people on this course. I don't know which one it was, but when we started and everybody went around the room and introduced themselves and they were like, married, 2 kids, married, 3 kids, bringing them here and there. And I was like, no kids, no husband to be looking after. But, I suppose work wise and socially wise, I was busy. But, yeah, to me, I think everybody approaches it differently. A lot of people were very nervous about it in the first module.
Yeah.
And it probably was the most asked question. But in my experience of the two particularly, let's say, because I would have been in touch with those people a lot, everyone takes a different approach. We get the pre-readings about 6 weeks in advance. So half the class will tip away at that from then. There were the people like me who probably leave it till the last week and a half.
Sure.
Um, there is value in reading it. You will get more out of the class if you have done the reading, because the context is there and you understand what's being discussed. But yeah, like there's people that, you know, tip away all along and that suits their lifestyle, and there's people that will just allocate the time at the end. The modules themselves, I think everybody really likes it. Everybody likes to be able to go, and my out of office is on. I
Mm,
did find that most people do actually step away from work. It would be
mm,
rare that they'd be running out for calls or anything. So that was quite nice to just devote yourself to it for the 2 days. And then again, with the post module, you usually have 4 to 6 weeks to do it. There were some people that got it done in week one. There were some
mm,
people that spent an hour or two every couple of days working on it. And then there were the me's that at the last week said, right, I'm going to block off 8, 10, whatever hours I needed to get it done. But everybody took their approach, but like I never felt stressed with workload on the
Yeah.
course. The pre-reading, some are more enjoyable than others.
Yeah.
Um, but they are interesting. And the ones that aren't enjoyable, you get to throw in a text to the WhatsApp group to be like, is anybody else struggling with this?
Great.
So they were bonding experiences in themselves. But yeah, the workload, in my experience and in that of the others, like there was one woman in particular that I started the strategy development and innovation course with in her 50s, hadn't been studying in years. And even when she had done a nursing degree. So it wasn't necessarily that she was accustomed to very academic reading style. And she was so nervous about it. And she ended up passing me out and getting her master's before me. Like within 2 years, she had
Wow.
completed her 3 modules, done extremely well on it, and kind of positioned herself for an amazing promotion in her organization where she was. So she went from being terrified
Yeah.
to within 2 years completing three.
That's great, Laura. So, I mean, and maybe a final word. Do you think the two diplomas fit each other? Do they go
Yeah.
together? Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was actually advised kind of internally from different people that had done them that, you know, there was a bit of harmony between them, as you had said, that, in one you're learning what a strategy actually is and the diagnostic model. Like one of the big things that I took out of these courses is this idea of, are you actually changing the right thing?
Mm.
That you assume there's a problem and you go and fix it, and 6, 9 year, 12 months down the line, you're like, I was actually working on the wrong problem.
Yeah.
So, the strategy development and innovation helps you to diagnose what the problem is
Yeah.
and understand the difference between a tactic and a strategy and all of that.
Yeah.
And then the organizational change, it goes way more detailed. It's all the complexities of org change, but very much the interpersonal stuff, the difficulties with people and the
Mm.
resistance to change. Like one thing I was only using the other day is your circle of influence. So,
Yeah.
you're here, who are the
Mm.
people around you? Who do they know? And how
Yeah.
you can use the interpersonal skills to kind of manage the power.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they were both, for me anyways, in my career. Um, it's given me that credibility, that I understand the process and I understand the complexity.
Mm.
I will do elements of it. And also I know what I don't know,
Yeah.
um, out of it. So yes, I do think there's a great harmony between the two of them. But I think all of the modules have been designed to, in a way, I suppose part of that roadmap, there is a logic to the three that you will inevitably choose based on your
Your
requirements career-wise.
circumstances. Yeah. Great. Thanks so much, Laura. Annabelle, Laura and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Uh, Thanks, Pat and Laura. Yes, there was a few questions came in there, but you answered them as you were going along. So we've covered off those. Laura, one particular thing, I have people who are, one person asked about the workload and how much time would you commit every week. Looking back now, before you did start on the diploma, is there anything that you wish you had known before you started that you know now and it would help you kind of get through the programs more at ease? I'm thinking kind of in terms of the workload, the commitment, and all of that.
I think so. If I could change my personality, I would have become one of those people that starts when we get the case
Yeah.
studies. Like there just was a calm to them, that they'd be like, I'll tip away and read these. And they were the ones that came in with little post-its coming out of the pages and all the notes taken. And, I think if you have it in you to start early and kind of tip away at it, it will make life easier. I had the capacity to be able to do this last minute because I didn't have bedtimes, routines, and matches to be bringing kids to. And it's how I work. But yeah, if you have the capacity and the mental capacity to be prepared, that just will help you. And then afterwards, I would always have after the modules, I would always have kind of gone through my notes within 2 days. And I would have outlined what I was going to do on the project. I might not have done it until I needed to do it, but I always mapped out what my assignment was going to be while the content was fresh in my head, and I found that really useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and I agree. And I mean, that's why I fill this program well in advance of it actually starting, because as you rightly mentioned, we send out that pre-reading 4 to 6 weeks early because we want you to start chipping away at it and to have it done in time. And then in some cases, there's a pre-module assignment. So that's why we give you all this time so you can work it in then around your busy working and personal lives. Michael just put in a message there that he's just completed strategy and you've convinced him now he's potentially going to do the organisational change. So that's great.
Oh yeah, no, it's
Right.
definitely worth it. Be prepared, Michael, to hate organizational change halfway through. But then, you'll come out the other end and be like, okay, I could do this. And actually, the reason I realized it was I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I ever want to work on this." And then my friend rang me and she's in Australia and she'd moved into a new role in like, it's kind of a government body where they look after kids with drug addiction. And she had to go in and restructure the whole organization. And over the course of 20 minutes, I was like, right, so you start here and then you do this and then you do this. And I basically outlined the change process. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm picking up more of this than I realized, and was probably more excited by it than I had anticipated. One other thing on I suppose, if you haven't done any of the courses yet, and this would be your first, I think lean into the class experience. Ask the questions and have the chats. It is a very welcoming group. Everybody is you know, everybody's nervous and everybody is like, I suppose, coming with a reason because they want to improve their own career or they want to help their own industry or their own company. And you will get so much out of it if you kind of, open up in the class and have the chats and give your opinions. I was regularly proven wrong on my pre-case study reading opinions versus my post-module opinions. I was like, interesting. The benefit of having people in a room to communicate with you means, I know now that I need other inputs before I go making some big decisions. But yeah, like the class participation really, um, you know, adds an extra layer.
Right, Laura.
Pat, there's a question there. So for organizational change and transformation, is it possible to do the practical assignments if you're not working for an organization at the time of doing the course? So this person is setting up their own coaching, leadership development business, and they're wanting to know, would they be able to still
Sure.
do org change?
Yes, the answer. So first of all, there may be opportunities for that person to use some of the assignments in as they develop their business, as they set it up. But if that's not available, if for whatever reason one or two of the assignments that's not feasible, we'll come up with an alternative assignment for them. So there's no barrier to their entering the program.
And also on that, Pat, because that was kind of my situation.
Yes.
So for some of the modules for two, I think I used clients that I had.
Mhm.
And then there was one that wasn't relevant. So I actually was able to use my old company and kind of retrospectively do it. So there is a bit of
Yeah.
wiggle room. And I don't know if the group project is still in the mix at the moment, but
No, it's not.
no. Okay.
So we've
Yeah.
done away with the group project on the basis that it was very hard to schedule people's time,
Mm.
given conflicting demands for people. So all the assignments are individual assignments.
Yeah, which everybody kind of loved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
practically.
But yeah, like there was kind of flexibility and kind of
Yeah,
picking hypotheticals.
yes.
Yeah. There's another question there from Paula. So her experience and work is heavily weighted towards commercial leadership and change based on the corporate strategy. Have you found participants in similar roles being able to get the most out of org change without completing the strategy diploma first?
Yeah, I think as we said, listen, the 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 two go together. Um, And, you know, if someone was asking me for advice, I'd say if you can do the strategy diploma first and then the org change diploma second, maybe that's great. But that's great, okay? If you can't do it in that sequence, or if you're going to do one of them as a standalone, you're still going to find the unique benefits of that diploma. So if I'm in a commercial leadership role and the strategy is handed to me, and I need to go and execute that, you will get the toolkit, the language, the techniques to help you deliver that strategy from the diploma and org change.
Yeah. And actually, I've had quite a few people that have come and done
Hmm.
the org change diploma standalone because
Yeah,
their organization is going through transformation at the time, and they find it so helpful to have the tools, the frameworks, and all to apply as they're going through. So
and yeah,
it's about you, it's about your skill gap, it's what you need at
yeah,
that moment in
yeah.
time.
And of course, the other thing is like these diplomas are standalone. They have a beginning, middle, and an end, and a discrete set of learning outcomes that are discrete to that diploma. And the diploma in org change is also a diploma on the pathway for our coaching program. So
Mm.
if people do diplomas in coaching, and then they can end up doing the diploma in org change, just adding to their two diplomas in coaching, and they get the degree in coaching. So that sort of shows that each diploma stands on its own,
Yeah,
with its own integrity, as well.
perfect. Just in the interest of time, Pat, can I get you to flick on to the next slide, please? So we've done the Q&A, and so the just in terms of autumn intakes now, so strategy is starting the 8th of October, and that will go on until and finish in May next year. And organizational change will start the 5th of November, and that will finish in June next year. So they're both in or around 9 months part-time. As Laura rightly mentioned, there's about 6 weeks between each module. So that gives you time to get your pre-reading, your assignment done. They're in person here at Smurfit Executive Development, which is part of the Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School. We're here in Blackrock in Dublin. They're level 9 diplomas, and then the fees are there. If you're a UCD alumni, we have an alumni rate. And once you've done one diploma with us, then you then become an alumnus and you can qualify for the alumni rate there from there on. I will follow up with a recording of this, and I'll also send you details, the program dates, so you'll have all of that to hand then. So we'll let you back to your lunch. Thank you so much to Pat and to Laura for being here today. It's been invaluable to have your insights and everything into the program. And if anybody wants to follow up with me directly, you'll have my details as well when I follow up. So have a lovely day, enjoy the sunshine, and hopefully see you in the autumn for the programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.